We know sports.
Couturier, he scores! Just don't quit by the fire.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Football Friday edition. We're running out of Football Fridays. There are only a few more weeks of these here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig, hanging out with you here in the Matt Black Kia Studios. We'll get to the latest Eagles news. Of course, the full injury report information is up right now at 97.3 ESPN.com and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We'll dig deeper into the NFL weekend. Mike Clay from ESPN NFL Insider, does all the amazing breakdowns over on ESPN Plus. We'll get into all the details with him because I love talking with Mike at different moments and points of a season, right? You know, it's one of those deals where it's like, I love to get in touch with Mike about, okay, this time of year, this point in the season, you have these conversations about where teams are, where they're going. You know, he is a prognosticator for ESPN. So he's a guy who does a lot of projections, a lot of the analysis over there. So we'll get his perspective on the Eagles, the NFC East, and more coming up today at 6:20 on 97.3 ESPN Plus. We will get you guys my football picks for the weekend. Of course, our picks every Football Friday being brought to my friends over at the FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. So we'll get to all that coming up in just a bit. But as always, I love to open the show with the injury reports. You guys are the biggest and latest of what is going on in the NFL. And I got to tell you guys, you know, when the Eagles injury report came out today, there was one part that just I expected, and there was another part that honestly did surprise me. And maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, but when the injury report came out and I saw Jalen Hurts is questionable, but was practicing today, I didn't expect that. I have to be frank with you guys, because when a guy like Jalen Hurts is so emphatic that he's going to play, it kind of makes you think, all right, you know, he's saying on Sunday, he's saying on Wednesday, I'm going to play, I'm fine, the ankle's not going to affect me. He's acting like it's no big deal. But then the opposite thing is being said by the head coach. The head coach is turning around and saying, well, we really don't know about Jalen. And it kind of makes you wonder what's really going on, okay? This is what Nick Sirianni said to the media today about Jalen Hurts. And again, I'm not saying there's a quarterback controversy. I'm not one of these people who's going to sit here and say that, you know, there's a problem with the quarterbacks, but listen to how Sirianni answers the question today at the press conference about Jalen Hurts.
You're starting quarterback Sunday. Yeah, get right after it, right? We still got time to make that decision. Jalen's questionable, but we still have a little less than 48 hours to let the body heal, see what's going on, even a little bit more. So that it's an unknown right now.
He acts like that Jalen Hurts has a serious injury, the way he talks about it. And I think that's what bothers me. You know, I wrote about this on the website. I understand there's a lot of these coaches that love to like play these games. I don't want to tell you who my starting quarterback is. Doug Peterson did it for years, and it drove me nuts. Sean Payton does it down in New Orleans. That also drives me nuts. I know that I remember years ago when Bruce Arians used to do in Arizona with the Cardinals. I'm just not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of this playing of games with the media. And I don't, you could tell me all you want that they're trying to create a competitive advantage or whatever. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it at all. I think the whole thing is stupid, honestly. I think that this idea that, you know, you think you have to lie to everybody and play this game of charades. You know, I understand if Hurts had like a serious knee injury, right? Or, if Jalen was a guy who, you know, we knew for a fact one way or the other could or couldn't play. But the way they're being ambiguous about an ankle injury, they already told you what they think about high ankle injuries. They put Jack Driscoll on the IR. He's done for the year. So obviously, Jalen Hurts has a lower ankle injury, which is much easier to recover from. I understand you don't want to take the ball away from a guy, but I'm not a fan of how the Eagles are going about this. So it's something we have to keep an eye on. It's something we have to keep a focus on, because if Hurts does play, he's not 100%. He's not going to be able to run around like he usually does. He's not going to be the same player. Obviously, last week, he had trouble throwing off the back foot at times. The back foot is the driving force for a player in a lot of situations. So, when you think about this team, the Philadelphia Eagles, what you're thinking about is, all right, how does this make sense? What is best for the team? To me, now again, not that I'm coaching the team, but I'm just talking to you guys about what I'm thinking. What I think is best for the team is Jalen Hurts to play. Because if Jalen Hurts is playing, then he's getting experience. Hurts is a young player. He needs to learn what it's like to go out there and play when you're not your best. You need to learn as a football player what it's like for the situation to not be ideal. So to me, this game is very much an opportunity to have a learning experience for Jalen Hurts. That's what I would like to see. Now, it doesn't mean that's what's going to happen, because I understand that the Eagles decide that they want to go with Minshew, because there's a variety of reasons why that would make sense. Number one, going with Minshew would give you the opportunity to basically rest your starting quarterback. It also gives you a chance to evaluate a guy that you basically didn't have during the preseason. Okay. Remember, he was acquired right before the season. Furthermore, getting a guy like Minshew some playing time also is a nice opportunity for you to have a good conversation with Hurts about, okay, sit back, watch the game, let it process. So I understand what the rationalization would be. I don't believe in it. I am not a fan of this at all. So to me, just start Hurts, stop playing games, and we can move on. Now, the more concerning thing is Boston Scott. Apparently, this illness has knocked him out to be able to practice all week. And if the Eagles go into the game with no Howard, who's been ruled out, and no Boston Scott, that means your running backs are Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, and you're calling Jason Huntley up from the practice squad. Personally, what I would do if I was the Eagles, I would just tell Jalen Reagor that you're the third running back and get over it. And I wouldn't play him in the slot the rest of the game. I mean, at this point, how do you trust Jalen Reagor to do anything? But that's neither here nor there. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Of course, you could DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of CLC. We are live on YouTube at 973 ESPN. Of course, you can text into the show at 609-403-0973. I will not go as far to say that Jalen Hurts played bad last week because of the ankle. But I don't think it's a coincidence that he was hurt and that it affected his play. I think they can be one in the same. I really do. And I think that we're at a point with him where there was a comment made by Doug Peterson. Now, Doug Peterson was on John Clark's podcast, which honestly, if you listen to the full podcast, it's a lot of Doug saying Doug stuff. Okay. But Doug said some interesting things about Hurts specifically. And I wanted to share with you guys because, considering Jalen has now played 16 games, so he has played the equivalent of an entire season. Okay. Doug Peterson said this about his young quarterback on the John Clark podcast. Because remember, he was part of the process. It was reported by multiple people that Jalen Hurts was a Doug Peterson pick. He was the guy that Doug Peterson pushed for. Peterson pushed for both Rager and Hurts to be drafted. So the man who was part of that process, who's no longer the head coach, said this about Jalen Hurts.
It's everything that when we drafted him that we hoped for. Things we saw on tape, but you kind of hope that he's going to continue to get better and he's going to grow and he's going to develop. And then when you get to know Jalen Hurts, you go, okay, this guy's got what it takes to become a really good NFL quarterback.
So what he's seen from him so far is he kind of expected it. He's playing the way that he expected. But they brought up another point about what Hurts has been dealing with.
He constantly wants to learn. And I think this goes back to just, the way he was raised, obviously. But like you said, you touched on it, at Alabama, at Oklahoma, he was in our system a year ago. He's in Nick's, system this year. So he really hasn't had a year where he can just digest one system, right? He's constantly learning. And that just goes, again, for me, it just proves how badly he wants to play and how badly he wants to perform. And I'm even excited for maybe even next season, having a second year, in one system and to see how he can grow and start putting pieces around him, to help him. But been very impressed with Jalen.
And I want to remind everybody about something. And I brought this up to everybody last year before I get to the final Peterson cut on Hurts. Doug, if you remember, would talk to Hurts after every play when he was starting last year. He wouldn't talk to Carson after every play. Carson and him would walk right past each other. Carson would go, look at the pad, talk to Press Taylor, talk to Nate Sudfeld, which I don't even know what on earth Sudfeld's going to contribute to the conversation because Sudfeld can't read a defensive like dependent on it. But I digress. Doug was invested in Jalen. He was invested in seeing this young man be successful. And he brought up an excellent point. You have a guy in Hurts who played in multiple offenses at Alabama, then had to change offenses again at Oklahoma, then gets the NFL as Doug's offense. Now he's got Sirianni's offense. And you have to wonder, has Jalen Hurts' development been hindered because of that? Because there's another Alabama quarterback going through a similar situation. That's Tua Tagovailoa. Tua has now started 16 games just like Jalen. And through 16 games, Tua has 21 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. Hurts has 19 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. It's pretty similar. Passing yards, Tua's got 3,515. Hurts has got 3,496. So you have two Alabama quarterbacks who both went through multiple offenses at Alabama. Remember, they went through guys like Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian. Now they got Bill O'Brien down there, right? They got all these guys flipping in and out of Alabama's program. Now they come to the NFL. Do you know how many coordinators Tua has had at Miami? 3. He's had 3 coordinators. I don't even know how it's possible. The guy's only been there 2 years. I mean, they're a mess down there offensively. Meanwhile, Jalen has been through 2 completely different offenses with the Eagles. So you have 2 quarterbacks going through 2 completely different offenses in their first 2 years in the NFL. And they both have comparable numbers in terms of touchdowns, interceptions, and passing yard totals. Now, Obviously, Hurts is the more adept running guy. But it's something to consider the fact that both of these guys are kind of going through similar situations. Hurts is the more built guy, less injured. Tua has obviously had a lot of injuries, which is a big reason why he's only started 16 games. But it's something to keep an eye on. Doug Peterson, a guy who loves quarterbacks, is invested in quarterbacks, thinks that, there needs to be some patience. It needs to be understood that Jalen is doing his best. I think we need to have that conversation as well. All right, Josh Hennig hanging out with you here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll talk more NFL coming up next with ESPN NFL insider Mike Clay on the other side right here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City, and we are live on YouTube and Twitter at 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig here on Game Night, a Football Friday, hanging out with you.
It's Sixers basketball tonight on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
Tobias Harris back in. Euro step, left hand left. Harris has got it all fucking here in this one. Tobias Harris.
The Sixers travel to the Atlanta Hawks. Coverage begins at 7:30. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey. 97.3 ESPN.
The holiday season is here, so you can catch all the football and basketball action at the FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Hotel and Casino, Atlantic City. It's time to experience sports betting done right at FanDuel Sportsbook, conveniently located right off the boardwalk at Bally's Hotel and Casino, Atlantic City. The retail sportsbook features 5 betting windows, a large video wall, a sports ticker, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get your game face on and score big when you bet with FanDuel Sportsbook only at Bally's in Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
We'll dig deeper now into the NFL Week 13 State of the NFL. Mike Clay, ESPN NFL prognosticator. Check out all of his excellent work over on ESPN Plus. You also can catch him all over the fantasy coverage over on the app, also on the digital, on TV. I feel like Mike is everywhere a lot of times these days. A busy man, but he made some time for us today. Mike, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm still kind of in shock here that it's week 13 already and we're talking playoffs, but it's been a fun ride so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the rest of the season has in store for us.
So let's start right there. It is week 13. Is there a scenario or a team or a player that has surprised you at this point in the season?
Oof. I mean, I could look at my preseason power rankings and tell you who doesn't look like what I thought they'd look like. There's definitely a few teams that jump out. I mean, the honest truth is, as chaotic as this season has been, right? A lot of upsets and, really good teams losing to bad teams, and it's gone on and on. If you look over the standings, most teams are pretty much where you expected, right? There's a couple exceptions to that. And those would be the surprise teams. The Patriots, I would say, most people didn't expect them to be this good with a rookie quarterback. They're sitting there at 8-4. That's when Seattle on the other end, right? Sitting there at 3-8. That's a shocker for sure. I know Russell Wilson missed some time, but they're not playing well with him either. And I would say maybe the biggest one is a team that's been near the basement for quite a while now. And they're suddenly right there in the mix in the AFC. And that's the Bengals sitting at 7-4. I mean, Joe Burrow, and he had a half a season under his belt coming in, was coming off that terrible injury. There's really no hype around them coming into the year, even though they had made some respectable off-season additions, nothing that was, earth-shattering. But here they come back this year, and they're on pace for 10 or 11 wins, and they look the part. So I would say those are the 3 teams that really pop out.
You mentioned how the standings mostly look similar. Well, in this area, we saw the Dallas Cowboys basically cement that they're going to win the division at this point. But I got to tell you, Mike, I wasn't that impressed with them last night. I felt like for a Dallas team with all the talent they have, I felt like they should have beaten the Saints by more. And, when Taysom Hill throws 4 interceptions and you only win by 10 points last night, it makes me wonder, is this a typical Dallas team that, okay, they win the division, but do they go anywhere in the postseason?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, they were a team I did like coming into the season. I didn't expect the defense to be as good as it is. And that's saying a lot because they've had a lot of injuries too. And yet they've been able to overcome that. So the talent's kind of come around for them. Some young guys have worked out. Obviously, Trevon Diggs has made a huge leap and is a potential defensive player of the year. And I mean, they haven't had DeMarcus Lawrence since week 1. He returned last week. They haven't had Randy Gregory for a month. I mean, there's still some Neville Gallimore's their top interior defensive lineman. He hasn't played all season. He'll be back probably next week. So they're still getting, unfortunately for, Eagles fans, I grew up an Eagles fan, so I feel this a little bit too. Unfortunately, the Cowboys are only getting better. They're getting healthier. Amari Cooper wasn't even a full go in that game against New Orleans. So I think that's the unfortunate thing is that, for the rest of that division is that they are just getting healthier and they have a lot of talent. It really is going to be hard to overcome. And honestly, if they are healthy when the time comes and the playoffs are here, they could certainly make a run because they have the raw talent.
You mentioned the Eagles, so I want to ask you about them as well. Obviously, they're basically in the playoff hunt because the NFC is pretty mediocre near the bottom of the standings. But this was always supposed to be a year of transition, a year of, moving from one era to the next. Are the Eagles what you expected of them? Are they better? Are they worse? What is your overall take so far on the season?
You know what? Honestly, I was kind of low on them this year. And the reason was you cannot really set a high bar for a second round quarterback in his second year who only has 3 NFL starts. I mean, it's just not reasonable to think, all right, well, I'm just going to assume he's good, or an average NFL starting quarterback. You can't do that. It's just not a reasonable way to prognosticate. So I was low on them. I expected it with some of the other offseason losses. I thought they did okay defensively to the point that the defense could be average. And then you have a healthy offensive line, even if it's a little older. Maybe the supporting cast is okay, but I was worried about the quarterback situation. And, I think that it's kind of worked out that way. The defense has been up and down, but for the most part, they've been really good against the pass. Not as good as against the run as in years past, but really good against the pass for the most part. And then offensively, some guys haven't worked out. You wanted to see Jalen Reagor make a leap. I mean, if he had made a leap, they might have won last week, so that's a big development for them. Zach Ertz obviously shipped off, and Hurts has been up and down, frankly. So it's kind of gone about as expected. I would say they're probably even maybe a little better than expected because they have a very light schedule the rest of the way, and they should get closer to 500, you would think, as long as they don't continue to hurt themselves like they did last week against the Giants. But, the reason for optimism, I would say, is that if you watch that game, you come out of it knowing the Eagles were the better team, right? I mean, it was just they did it to themselves. They had so many opportunities to beat them, and they just kept blowing opportunity after opportunity. So as long as they avoid those mistakes going forward against the schedule they have, they should be able to get close to a wild card, maybe even get into the playoffs. And then who knows? If Jalen Hurts keeps getting better, you never know once the playoffs come around.
Mike Clay joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Mike Clay NFL on Twitter. Check out all of his NFL and fantasy sports coverage over on ESPN Plus. Mike, about Jalen Hurts, I was listening to what former head coach Doug Peterson had to say. We played a couple of his clips before you came on. And Doug Peterson, who multiple reports are out there that he was the guy who wanted the Eagles to draft Jalen Hurts, he says that he thinks people need to be patient with this guy because he's been through multiple offenses and that he has seen in him this year what he saw on film of him. So, how much weight do we put into a guy like Doug Peterson, who is no longer coaching anymore, who's saying, hey, be patient with this guy. This guy can be a franchise caliber quarterback. Or is that the voice of a guy who's trying to maybe hope for the best with a guy that he was involved in drafting?
Yeah, it could be a little bit of both, I think. I think that at this point we've seen Hurts make 15 starts, about a full season. And I think we have seen progression. Last year he had a low completion percentage, but he was really aggressive. So you had to kind of adjust for that and say, okay, this guy came out, he's a second round pick, only made a few starts, super aggressive, forcing the ball downfield, running a lot. You would expect a low completion rate, right? And this year, he has yards per attempts down, but his completion percentage is way up. He's been a little bit more conservative, still aggressive, but more conservative than he was last year, and still a major factor with his legs. So I think we've seen him get better and better and better. Now, I understand last week was a setback, no question about it. But remember, he threw 3 picks in that game. He had 5 coming into that game, right? He had done a nice job avoiding big mistakes like that before that game. And I still think there's plenty of reason for optimism here. So, look, he should be the guy the rest of the way as long as he's healthy and plays, and we'll see if he gets better. And I sort of touched on this before. The only drawback you really have is pedigree. I know people hate to hear that, and they say it doesn't matter. Once you're in the league, draft capital doesn't matter. But go look at the 32 teams in the NFL right now and isolate their franchise quarterback. Not necessarily the guy starting this week. Their franchise quarterback right now on the roster, they're almost all first-round picks for a reason. The NFL, they first-round picks do bust. Don't get me wrong, but the ones that work out are almost always first-round picks. It's almost impossible to find a Tom Brady or even a Kirk Cousins or something along those lines. It's really hard to find that. So that bothers me a little bit, because so many teams passed on him and they saw concerns. But at the same time, as long as he keeps improving, perhaps he can work out and be the franchise quarterback. So I'm intrigued to see how he does over the next month. Again, the schedule is beatable. He should step up. He should dominate this next month, and he should get the Eagles into the playoffs. If he doesn't, then you have more questions.
You mentioned the quarterbacks around the league, and I want to ask you about that because, to me, and I'm not saying I'm right, just my opinion, I feel like once you get past Brady, Rodgers, Mahomes, once you get beyond that top tier, there's a bunch of dudes who there's not a ton of variance of difference. Like, to me, how much of a difference is there between Garoppolo to Cousins? We also all know that Roethlisberger's on the downside of his career. I love Justin Herbert, but his team isn't winning a lot of games. So, how do we really gauge quarterbacks in today's game, considering that after the top tier guys, it seems like there's a lot of just, dudes who are around the same kind of range.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. And part of that then is good coaching, maximizing the talent. You got to have that. The Eagles need that. They need to find a way to make sure that they're utilizing Hurts's abilities. And I think they've done a pretty respectable job of that. Maybe put too much in his hands early in the season. And they adjusted to that, right? They were criticized for it. We all criticized them for it. They adjusted. They went with a run-heavy attack, found ways to put the ball in Hurts's hands as well, running the football. And they started winning games and playing better, and it's helped the defense out. You put less pressure on the defense as well that way. So, if that's the way of asking, can the Eagles win a Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts? I think the answer is potentially yes. If he continues to improve, you just need a good support system around him, good supporting cast, good coaching, and they can get there. But again, he has to just continue to get better. He can't tail off, keep making mistakes like he did last week. But, you are right. There's that tier of elite talent, and then there's a lot of, average quarterbacks that kind of go up and down. One year they look really good, like Kirk Cousins does right now. Another year they might look poor because guys are injured around them, like Jimmy Garoppolo, for example, last year. So it's just that kind of roller coaster around the league. But at the same time, there's a reason you're always throwing darts at quarterbacks, right? Because you could erase a lot of issues with your roster by having a great quarterback. And that's something a team like the Chiefs has done the past few years. A lot of holes on that roster, including this season. Some of them have shown up. They showed up in the Super Bowl last year too, but Mahomes is so good that he can overcome a lot of that.
Well, that's kind of where I was thinking I've talked in the past with different guests, Mike, about the fact that, one of the problems in the NFL, at least to me, is that you look at the upcoming draft. I'm a big college football junkie. There's no like Trevor Lawrence, Andrew Luck in the next draft, and the problem is that teams are always going to draft quarterbacks, are always going to take shots. There's always going to be EJ Manuel drafted in the first round, right? So, to me, there's a part of me that kind of wonders, moving forward in the league in 2 years, if Tom Brady is no longer playing and Aaron Rodgers wants to go host Jeopardy and it's just Mahomes and everybody else, there's this kind of vacuum of quarterbacks are going to fill that void. And I just kind of think about the state of the league because we have a lot of talent, but we don't have a lot of guys who are always winning games. Like I said, I love Justin Herbert personally, but like I said, it's not like the Chargers are out there like 8-2 on the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. And there'll be an injection of more talent. The guys we didn't know when Justin Herbert came in, he would be this good. We didn't know Mahomes would be this good or Lamar Jackson. So those guys will come along. And honestly, someone from next year's draft class might turn out to be a superstar. We just don't know for sure. But I do agree with you. There are no, you're not hearing the tanking talk this year. Let's tank for Tua or tank for Andrew Luck, right? So, and maybe that's poor timing for Philadelphia, having the three first-round picks. And it would be a great opportunity if one of those players existed to move up and take a shot. So, I don't know if they need to. They can afford to give Hurts another year if he's not, if he progresses over this next month or so. And if they don't want to do that, maybe you spend those 3 draft picks on, maybe you trade. Honestly, maybe you package them and trade for a quarterback. Maybe a guy like Russell Wilson could become available. That's an option, and there will be others as well. It could be a very chaotic offseason at the quarterback position. So they do have options, even though it may not be that franchise quarterback with the first pick. But, it all comes down to Hurts and how he does over the final few weeks of the season.
Mike, one more before I let you go. You mentioned some of the AFC North quarterbacks, and I'm curious, what is your perspective on the teams in the AFC North at this point? Because, the Ravens, they have a good record, but their team is just so injured. I mean, they won a game with Tyler Huntley, and I would feel comfortable saying that 90% of football fans had no idea who he was before that game a couple of weeks ago. And, the Bengals, they look really good at times, and then they lose to the Jets several weeks ago, right? The Steelers, Roethlisberger is obviously hanging on by a thread. And then you have the Browns, who I don't know what to do with them half the time. So, how do you measure, engage, and stack the AFC North at this point?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, usually I internally can kind of pinpoint good coaching or bad coaching based on, here's how a team looks on paper, right? They have X amount of raw talent. Do they over or underachieve? And the Ravens, every year, it's like they lose all this talent. Other teams sign up their star free agents. And then what do? They come back and go 12-4 again, or 11-5. It's like they've been doing this the whole John Harbaugh era. They're just so good, they're so well coached, so well managed. They found themselves a great quarterback, but even when they even when they do have injuries or they seem like they lost too much talent, they continue to win football games. So I think you have to give them the edge in that division right now. The Bengals, I thought maybe they were over their heads early on. They won all them games, then they fell off and lost a couple. And then you're like, all right, here, typical Bengals, but now they bounce back and they're dominating teams right now. So I think you have to consider them probably the second best team there right now. And honestly, on paper, the team that I think is best there, at least coming into the season that was best, they've had a lot of injuries, is the Browns. I mean, they were loaded on paper coming into the season. And again, you lose Jack Conklin, you have injuries on the O-line, you're missing some guys on and off defensively. Baker Mayfield's not even close to 100%. It just hasn't worked out for them, but they're still hanging at 6-6. If they could turn it on after the bye, Baker's healthier, they could really make a run at this, honestly. They've added so many pieces on defense, so many star players, good, solid or star players. If that comes together, Baker plays well, the running game's working, they could absolutely make a run. So honestly, if I had to handicap it, I'd say Ravens 1 right now, probably Bengals and Browns 2nd, Steelers 3rd. I know the Steelers beat the Browns, but the Browns beat the Bengals. I mean, you could play that game in circles all day long, but that's probably how I'd look at it right now.
He's Mike Clay, ESPN NFL prognosticator. Follow him on Twitter at Mike Clay NFL. Check out every week the playbook, all the ESPN fantasy football analysis you need. Also, one of my favorite things he does, the key wide receiver, cornerback matchups for each week, all on ESPN Plus. And you catch all that work over there. Great stuff, Mike, today. I appreciate you jumping on, and enjoy the football this weekend.
All right, you too. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Josh Hennig here on GameNight, hanging out with you guys here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, on Football Friday here with you guys, being brought to you by my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook over at Bally's Hotel Casino in Atlantic City. It's time to experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get on all the games you love at the FanDuel Sportsbook, conveniently located right off the boardwalk at Bally's Hotel Casino in Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. I'll give you my full breakdown, who I think is going to win the Eagles-Jets game, my analysis of the football weekend, my picks on a Football Friday as well, all coming up on the other side right here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, and we are live on YouTube at 97.3 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig, and this is Game Night.
Today on ESPN Radio, it's the Pac-12 championship game. 10th-ranked Oregon goes head-to-head with 17th-ranked Utah in Las Vegas with a trip to the Rose Bowl on the line. It was Utah who blew out Oregon on November 20th and into the Ducks' hope at the playoff. Can the Utes take down Oregon again, or is it revenge time for the Ducks? Number 10, Oregon. Number 17, Utah. On 97.3 ESPN, coverage begins after Sixers basketball.
This week's featured bet is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook at Bally's Atlantic City. In college football, take Georgia to cover 6.5 versus Alabama in the SEC Championship. Bet all the action in style at FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh and Nick here, hanging out with you in the Matt Black Kia Studios here on 97.3 ESPN. Want to chime into the conversation? Who you think's going to win the Eagles-Jets game? With if the game's going to play out as? Of course, you can chime in, text it at 609-403-0973. You also can DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And, of course, we are live on YouTube at 973 ESPN. You know, when you look at the overall picture of what Mike Clay was saying before we hit the break, you know, someone like Mike Clay, it's not his job to be a fan of a team. It's his job to, you know, analyze situations. And his thing isn't, you know, he doesn't love Jalen Hurts, doesn't hate Jalen Hurts. But I think he brings up a very interesting point. We live in a world where people tend to look at, for example, quarterbacks and say, well, if you're a first round pick, we'll treat you one way. If you're not a first round pick, we treat you another way. And I understand where he's coming from. I just don't agree with that way of thinking, because that way of thinking will get you in trouble. Okay. When you're the person who sits there and only looks at people through the lens of first round pick, second round pick, third round pick, you're going to miss something somewhere. You're going to miss somebody somewhere. You're going to overlook something. So I think that, you know, to judge Jalen Hurts based on where he was drafted more or less than what he's doing on the field, while from a macro perspective, it's fair. From a case-to-case basis, it's very not unfair. Because again, whether it's Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, I know Tom Brady's an exception to the rule, but there's a plenty of cases where guys had not been first-round picks, but they have been guys who have had a huge impact. At the end of the day, you know, how many guys who were drafted a few years ago in that vaunted class? Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, all 5 were first-round picks. And at this point, you only feel good about 2 of them. One of them, Baker, you're like, I don't know yet. And the other 2 look like they're complete disasters. All right, Josh Hennig hanging out at the Matt Black Kia Studios. Before we get to the football picks for the weekend, Pete Thompson is checking in. He is live right now at Joe Canals in Belmar until 7:30 p.m. for Screwballs for a chance to win Flyers tickets. So Pete Thompson is hanging out there with the peanut butter whiskey hanging out there. Pete, first thing I need to know, have you imbibed any of the whiskey yet today?
I have, yes. Amber is here serving the free samples of the Screwball peanut butter whiskey, and we're having a lovely time. Plus, we want to thank Dave, Murph, and Lou. Who's Lou? He's not the bus driver. He works here as well. And we want to thank those guys for hosting us. And, yes, we've had a couple ring toss people already. They've come into now, it's funny because, Leanne from our prize patrol, right? She put the antlers. It's antlers on your head. Like, I'm thinking, oh, ring toss. There's going to be something you throw the ring on. Yeah, me. Right. But they're inflatable rings. So this woman is like trying to, and I'm 6 feet tall. So I'm trying to like bend down and help her. You can't see your own horns or you can't see your own antlers, so I'm trying to like assist a little bit, but we got a bunch of prizes. Plus I got to tell you something, Josh, Screwball is like really the bleep, because they have these sweet Garden State Screwball. Basically it's the green and yellow, the iconic green and yellow for every, Parkway sign, every road sign that's out there. They're no dummies. They know how to do this. Plus, Amber has the Screwball on ice right here on the way out, and it's on sale now too, by the way. So yeah, we hope you come out and visit us. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're gonna hit a lot of locations here in December. Screwball and I are gonna be best friends.
Best friends. So I want to verify again. It's Joe Canals in Belmar. We got to make sure people go to the right Joe Canals to go see the PT.
That is true. I feel like we're talking about like Berlin Cross Keys Road, and there's about 800. Yes, it's the Joe Canals in Belmar. Please come out and see us. We're here till 7:30.
Pete, real quick before I let you go, I don't know if you heard what Gil and I talked about earlier in the show, and I didn't catch the whole conversation with you and Gil earlier, but so if you were to combine a Screwball whiskey drink with another drink, what would you combine it with?
Well, it's funny because Leanne and I were talking about it. I had some Screwball last night. Now I've had some tonight, and both times it's just straight up Screwball and it's smooth. Now, the other thing is that she said that she did a peanut butter and jelly shot. And I said, well, what was the jelly? And she's like, I don't know. I was a little inebriated. She didn't remember the other half of it. So yeah, whatever tastes like jelly. I mean, or it's maybe something chocolate. Is there a chocolate liqueur out there?
Oh, there's definitely chocolate liqueur.
Godiva. Yeah, there you go. Well, Amber says Godiva and Screwball is to die for.
Okay, Godiva. All right, that
works.
That's a good poll right there. Yep, sure.
I haven't given Amber any money to supply this. She's just serving up the answers left and right, just like she's serving up some Screwball.
Well, it just sounds like she's just very good at her job. That's what it sounds like.
That is true. She's very talented. Yeah.
All right.
And
Pete Thompson
having a good time.
at the PT973 on Twitter, or go to @973 ESPN Twitter. You see the stand over there at the Joe Canals in Belmar. He's there till 7:30 p.m. tonight, hanging out. Him, Leanne, Amber, the whole crew up there. Go say hi. Go get a shot to win Flyers tickets. And of course, PT will be touring around New Jersey with Screwball throughout the month. Pete, appreciate you checking in.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate you, buddy. Talk to you soon.
All right, Josh Hennig back here on Game Night, hanging out with you guys, the Matt Black Kia Studios on 97.3 ESPN. All right, let's break down some of the college football picks here, the NFL picks. But first, I always promise you guys the South Jersey High School Athlete of the Week. Of course, each week on 97.3 ESPN.com, we have the list every week of the South Jersey High School Athlete nominees. And we've been taking votes in all week. So I want to run back for you guys who were the nominees and then give you this week's winner. First of all, your nominees were Trevor Cohen of Holy Spirit. Quarterback completed 15 and 19 passes for 264 yards and 5 touchdowns against Atlantic City. David Julian, he ran for 181 yards and 2 touchdowns while also throwing a touchdown pass in the Anchor Bowl versus Lower Cape May. Latazir Brooks, this guy's a freshman. He is already a super stud. 119 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns in their win over rival Vineland, the oldest high school football rivalry in New Jersey since 1893, I should say, that rivalry's been going on. Also, Riley Gunnels of Ocean City High School. The quarterback completed 12 of 19 passes for 137 yards and 2 touchdowns over Pleasantville. And then Kevin Mayfield, the senior, he rushed for 126 yards and a touchdown for St. Joe as they defeated Winslow Township. So those are your nominees this week for the South Jersey High School Athlete of the Week. And now The winner of the award this week, little pause for dramatic effect for you folks out there. Well, the winner goes to, and this was a very interesting vote. This vote came down to 3 players all week long. Your winner came out to be Trevor Cohen of Holy Spirit. By the way, Trevor Cohen is the 12th Cape Atlantic League player to throw for 5 touchdowns in a game, a list that includes 2 other Holy Spirit high school graduates, Ryan Yost and Fred Dalzell. So congratulations to Trevor Cohen for winning this week's high school athlete of the week here in South Jersey. Of course, check back to 973ESPN.com and the 973 ESPN mobile app each week to vote for the athlete each and every week. All right. Eagles game. Listen, I don't think anybody's picking against the Eagles. All right. I don't think anybody in their right mind is going to not pick the Eagles. But with that being said, I do think that something Mike Gill brought up earlier is very interesting to keep an eye on. That is, when the Eagles win, they blow people out. When they don't win, it's kind of a messy, close game for the most part the last several weeks. So I think the Eagles get a definitive win. I think the Eagles do beat the Jets. I'm going to go 30-13. I think it's another 200-plus rushing yard day for the Eagles because, one, the Jets' Sheldon Rankins is currently listed as doubtful, and I don't think the Jets' defense can stop the Eagles at all. And realistically, the Eagles should have beat the Giants last week if it wasn't for the 4 turnovers and for Jalen Reagor and Greg Ward both dropping passes. The third thing I think about this game is I don't think the Eagles are going to ask Jalen Hurts whether he or whoever starts. I assume Hurts is going to start, but I assume they're not going to ask him to win the game for them. I assume it's going to be a running game. Miles Sanders, Gainwell, if Scott's available, he'll go. They're going to run the ball, and they're going to tell the Jets, stop us. I think Sirianni's more interested in winning than showing how smart he is in this game. And let's be realistic. Sirianni needs to keep winning to prove that he is the man that should have been hired by the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, to be the head coach. You fired a Super Bowl winning head coach for this guy. You got to win games. And you've already won more games than you did last year, so that's an improvement. All right. College football Saturday. Of course, our picks being brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. Get your game face on and score big this weekend when you bet at the FanDuel Sportsbook right off the boardwalk at Bally's Atlantic City. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLE. You know my pick of the week, as you've heard all day on 97.3 ESPN, Georgia to cover the 6.5. I don't believe in Alabama. I told you guys for weeks I thought Auburn was going to cover the spread against Alabama. That was a 19-point spread. The 2 teams go to double overtime. Alabama with double overtime. Georgia has a ton more talent than Auburn does. I think Georgia makes life miserable for a young and inexperienced Alabama team. I think Georgia wins by at least 10, which means they cover the 6.5 spread. I also like under in the Michigan-Iowa game. Don't be tricked into picking a side in Michigan-Iowa because that could be a backdoor cover and you could be losing money there. But Michigan's probably going to win this game like 24-10. All right. Iowa has just an abysmal offense, and their defense is good enough to give Michigan problems. I think it's a low-scoring game. Of course, you can hear that game tomorrow night right here on 97.3 ESPN, as well as the Georgia-Alabama game. We have a triple-header of college football action after Billy Schwein in the locker room. The Big 12 championship at noon, SEC championship kickoff at 4 p.m., and then the Big 10 championship kicks off after 8 p.m. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night. Have a great weekend.
Saturday morning in the locker room with Billy Schwein. Mike Carlin joins me in the studio. The Eagles wasted a golden opportunity last week to beat the Giants. They returned to MetLife Stadium to face the Jets. We'll talk about it. The sportsbook consigliere Dave Sherpan checks in from Vegas with his 6-pack of picks for this weekend's big games. Then we'll hear from former Sixers general manager Pat Williams about his career and the state of the NBA. It's the locker room with Billy Schwein, Saturday mornings from 10 a.m. to noon on 97.3 ESPN and the mobile app.